federal government says the BBC and Daily Trust will face consequences for glorifying terrorism in their reporting. The BBC and Daily Trust recently published documentaries containing interviews with bandit warlords. In a 50-minute documentary titled The Bandit Warlords of Zamfara, published on Monday, the BBC Africa provided insights into the mindset of bandit kingpins, the booming kidnap for ransom industry, and how Zamfara's insecurity may have been brought on by the ethnic conflict between Hausa and Fulani groups. In March, Daily Trust TV, an arm of Daily Trust newspaper, published a special report and documentary which exposed major issues around banditry in Nigeria. Well, Minister of Information and Culture says such reporting gives legitimacy to terrorism.
The MPC, they are also aware of these two incidents. They are looking at which part of the broadcasting code which parts have been violated by both the BBC and the Daily Trust. And I can assure.
And for a robust discussion on this issue, Arise analyst Mahmoud Jega and security analyst as well as editor-in-chief, Global Sentinel, Senator Iroegbu, join me now. Thank you both of you gentlemen for joining us on the Arise interview. Legitimizing terrorism, that seems to be the accusation coming from government against the media. Is modern terrorism the same as media terrorism? Mahmoud Jega.
You see, the terrorism has many different angles, of which propaganda is a major part. These days, of course, they have the use of the social media and the internet, but even that one is censored to a large extent, so they have to go underground. You know, they have the dark side of the internet, where major terrorist groups maintain their sites and also broadcast their messages. Now, the dividing line between reporting mainstream news and serving the propaganda purposes of terrorist groups is a thin one. But editors, well-trained editors, should be very aware of that. I mean, I was an assistant editor in one magazine and a full title editor in 4 different newspapers in the last 30 years. And I know that there are rules of things that you can publish. When I was in Kaduna, for example, on 2 occasions there were major intercommunal riots, and we got pictures of corpses lying everywhere. And the editorial decision is that you don't publish that because, you know, it could inflame the situation and trigger so-called reprisal attacks. Now, the same thing, the major Western media houses, you don't see them interviewing. I mean, for example, when Osama bin Laden destroyed the World Trade Center, all the major Western media houses, nobody went to interview and ask him, what is your motive? Let's understand your motive. He must have a certain motive, but we don't want to hear it if you commit such a crime. So that should be the dividing line, even though, of course, everybody in Nigeria is frustrated with the insecurity situation, and the media must play a role of reflecting the public mood and putting the government on its feet. But there has to be a dividing line before you cross over into encouraging the propaganda and the terrorists.
That seems to be where the challenge is. You know, where do you draw that red line and say, look, this is how far you can or should go in reporting, you know, activities of terrorists and terrorism itself. Iroegbu, the same question, really. I mean, because I saw somewhere where, you know, a piece that actually, you know, captioned it in a way that is really scary. And I'm wondering, am I in the job of encouraging terrorism? Is that what it is? You know, when you say that modern terrorism is media terrorism, what's your understanding of that?
You know, since the issue of terrorism came into the limelight, I know terrorism has been an old issue, but since the 9/11, it has escalated into the global scene. So there's something that is called catch-22, that the media dilemma that the media find itself between their primary role of informing the public of things that are of public interest, and then the issue of national security. And then there's also the problem, the challenge of media censorship, and then the independent role of the media. So, and in this situation, some of all these insecurity issues are things of public interest, because when you talk about security, in fact, it's at the apex of human needs. And that's why if you come to issue of governance, the security of life and property is at the top of it. And this issue that the BBC carried is something that has been a very protracted issue, and the government or the public, the government have been treating it as something of a mystery. So,
in other words, the question is, how does this documentary, whether it's by BBC or any other media organization, how does it help the communities? How does it help society? Jega, does it in any way really add, does it help us? Does it help society?
Well, you see, there is an aspect of reporting crisis which helps society and also helps to put government on their toes. You know, if you report from the point of view of the victims, here are women and children running away from crisis situations, telling stories about how their houses were invaded, how they were raped, how they lost so many relatives. This is the dilapidated situation in which they are living. People cannot go to their farms. People are afraid of traveling from one part to another. People cannot congregate because they are afraid of bomb blast. All that one serves the public interest because the government has to be alive to its responsibilities. Now that's different from going into the bush, identifying the terror kingpin and interviewing him, and he is boastfully saying how many people he has killed. Like I saw the one where Aliru was saying, honestly, he can't even tell the number of people he has killed, and he was not remorseful, and he is threatening to do more. Now that's crossing the line.
And there's the one that actually claimed that, you know, he doesn't do the kidnapping, he only just kills.
He only just kills, that he doesn't kidnap. Or the one who said he was part of the group that kidnapped Jengebe school girls, and he was boastful about that's crossing the line, really. That's crossing the line.
So where should the censorship come from? Every now and again, we've heard the Nigerian government talk about the need, you know, to, well, you know, regulate the media somewhat, whether it's social media, traditional media. Is self-censorship, are we even doing enough of that as the media?
I think the Nigerian media, from what I know, from the experience I've had, I've covered defense for some time, for over a decade now, and I know if it comes to censorship, this is what Nigerian journalists of media, they are trying a lot, because they have a whole lot of information at their disposal, which they try very well to manage. But there is an extent to which you will censor and you become an accomplice in the eyes of the public, and you lose their credibility. Because we are in the information age, and there is a limit, unlike the days where the conventional media has hold of everything. Now we have the social media, we have citizen journalism, and if you are not proactive, they will set the narrative. If maybe you try to deny obvious, then you become part of the problem. So that's where censorship marries with the propaganda. But there is something that is called conflict-sensitive communication.
What's
like you, as a media personality, as a gatekeeper, because as in the media industry, you have the gatekeeping, you have the agenda setting. What is it is in the interest of the public, and then what amount of information at your disposal do you think that should be available to the public without causing more harm to the problem you are trying to solve? Because what is the main agenda of the media is to expose the ills in the society, or they give information so that the public will be informed. For example, you are going to Kaduna and there's killing in Zaria, and you don't have the information, you are blind to it, you just walk into it. if you allow, maybe government say, don't report about it, don't report that there's killing in Zaria, and everything is normal. If you as a journalist, you don't report it, and
you would have become an accomplice.
You become an accomplice. So that's why I say catch-22 dilemma.
Right.
It's a fine line. Where do I drop this line? That's where the professionalism comes into. And sometimes government, where is the interest of regime protection and national security? Because it's also another fine line. Sometimes government talk just to protect their own regime, to look good in the eyes of the public at the detriment of national security. So these is less for you as a stakeholder, also, because as a journalist, most except for those reporting or from a foreign citizen reporting here, the majority, about 99%, are also citizens of this country. So
right.
you also have the interest of the country at heart.
Alhaji Mahmood Jega, how do you censor without becoming an accomplice? It's a balancing act, and a tough one at that. How do you do that?
The ideal situation is self-censorship by media professionals. They will draw the line between what serves the public interest. You know, at the end of the day, as an editor, you say, well, first there has to be a country and people inside the country before there is anything else. You don't just publish because you want to look good if it will cause confusion and cause commotion and jeopardize public safety. Some countries go beyond that. I was in Israel many years ago on a tour, and we were taken to the office of the military censor. A young army major, he was sitting there. He told us that every day he dictates which stories should not go out, and all the media houses in Israel are bound by law. The radio and TV and all the newspapers must comply. So we even asked him jokingly, we said, well, what did you censor today? He said, unfortunately, I cannot tell you. You know, but he said that every day he reels out. Now, we probably don't want to go that far.
No, that's not a template we want to use.
We don't want to. And you know, in the early 90s, when the government wanted to do the National Press Council, there was a resistance from media editors and proprietors saying that we should be allowed to censor ourselves. We have the professional training and the experience and the patriotism and the commitment, which is true at the general level, but every now and then, you know, it fails. That is the problem. Every now and then, either one quack editor or somebody who does not see things that way might step off the line. Right. So it is good to have some method of sanction, but provided most of the professionals comply, then you are on a good state. For
where Nigeria finds herself now, how more important is it that you actually practice self-censorship, especially if you bear in mind the Rwanda experience?
Yes, and like he mentioned the case of Israel, and you rightly said we don't want to go there. Each country has their history. If you check the history of Israel, it's different from history of Nigeria. You know, Israel is a nation that have been protected by their military might and their history, and over time, if the censorship have worked for them, and over time the public have observed, even the media, that by obeying this they are more protected. Right. But if the case is different in Nigeria, where you are told to be censored and insecurity is increasing, things are deteriorating, you have to begin to ask questions as a media person, as a journalist. So if in the line of experience also guides you, like I said, the history. So if over time you find out, like I said, to avoid being an accomplice, right, and the military tell you, okay, don't report about this, and people keep on dying, people keep on losing their loved ones, you keep on seeing obituary, you keep on seeing the security on governed spaces, military losing ground, and you're not telling the veracity, the authenticity, or even the authority for you to, or the moral ground upon which you can obey what they are trying to tell you. And also, you check our history. We have a history of military rule where they aim to suppress the press, and the press, and we're on the vanguard of, you know, fighting against it to restore democracy. So you find out we try to protect this with, you know, fight against it.
How would you say social media, because we mentioned social media earlier,
Yes.
and there seems to be this race to, you know, get there first, be the first to break the news and all of that, but unfortunately you have social media that seems to have gone way ahead of traditional
Yes,
media.
I mentioned it. Yes.
That is a tough one.
That's,
The role of social media.
Of course, because, you know, as you said, people, everybody can just broadcast something without waiting for corroboration. In the last so
Or
many
without
years,
even caring about
care about
corroboration.
many people will send me a message, so elder statesman has died, please confirm. I say, well, what is there to confirm? You have already broadcast the whole thing, and then after a few minutes you see that, I'm sorry, the family had just denied it. I say, why didn't you wait for the family to confirm? Now that's even at the individual level. Now you see, when a country is at war, and some organizations have been declared terrorist organizations, that law should have really defined the line. What should anyone do in relating with a terrorist group? Officially designated terrorist groups like Boko Haram, Ansaru, and the bandits have all been declared terrorist groups, and I think IPOB also. So the law should define the limit. Of course, there should be discussion. Media professionals will tell you, no, that one is going too far. Because, of course, as Senator said, the security agencies and the police cannot be trusted to provide the right information.
And
the police in particular.
they're not, to a very large extent, they're not providing the kind of
That's where
information you need, and they create these gaps.
That's where apart from, in addition to creating that gaps, is the issue of inconsistency in the actions of government. For example, you see when Sheikh Gumi was actually going to the forest, meeting the same bandits, and people were going from one media to another, actually making some suggestion as if he's sympathetic or making people to see their own side of the story. And this same Minister of Information said, yes, that they are aware of Sheikh Gumi and they are in support of his intervention. So you begin to ask, okay, what is the difference between what they supported Sheikh Gumi to do and what the BBC has reported? So today there are, if it suits their own, but the same situation, they go with it. If it's something that, okay, doesn't be the same similar situation, they now, okay, begin to talk about the law. So, and this gives kind of different signals to the members of the public as per the sincerity of government on these issues. And that's why members of the public are looking for alternative narrative, yes, apart from what the government is saying, because over time they feel that they cannot align with what government is saying and the reality on ground. So action of government also need to reassure members of the public that yes, they are serving their interest and that they are there to protect them, and that whatever information they are giving to them is the truth.
Right.
And fact.
Madam Jega, do you think this is where government and media really needs to come to a round table and say, look, we're all in this together. Is there a way that we can, you know, put out the stories without further jeopardizing the unity and the peace of the nation? Is that a possibility?
That should be done virtually every day. It's not even you wait until the situation gets out of hand. Exactly. There should be regular interaction between the security chiefs, the government, the ministers responsible for security, with media editors and proprietors on a regular basis, every time, even when things are very calm. Because you know that even if things are calm today, anything can happen tomorrow. You don't have to wait until the situation gets out of control. And as we said, media professionals have go areas, professionally defined go areas of their own. But the terrorists, you know, are a serious problem. I was a newspaper editor when the Boko Haram problem started. And that time, Boko Haram had a very vibrant media office headed by a man called Abu Darda. I think he was captured in Kaduna many years ago. That man will phone and threaten us that he has issued a statement. If he does not see it in the newspaper tomorrow, he was threatening to attack us. Yes, and we say, well,
how do
we
you
will only
respond
take
or react
what
to that kind
we will
of
say.
thing?
We will report what is newsworthy. We will not take all your long ranting and accusations and all that. And as you know, that was why they bombed the This Day office here in Abuja. And then they posted a video on the social media. They listed many newspapers, including my own, and said we were next because we were supporting the government. We were not supporting them. That's what they said. And I remember we wrote an editorial that time. We said, we are sorry, we cannot support you. The media derives its existence and protection and independence from the constitution and the laws of Nigeria. If there is no Nigeria, there will be no Nigerian media. So definitely anybody who wants to destroy this country, we cannot possibly support you. So if that is the accusation against us,
that's fine.
That's fine. That's fine, really.
How about taking out the oxygen? Let me stay with you, Madam Jega. This, continuous putting their stories, their narratives out there. The Shekau wants to say whatever he has to say. Is the media unwittingly helps propagate, whatever he has to say.
Especially the
How
social
do we
media.
take the oxygen out without muzzling the media, whether it's on the part of the government or on the part of the media itself?
We must, certainly as you said, there were some captives of Boko Haram when they came out. They told stories. They said when they were in the camps in Sambisa that these Boko Haram fighters will wake up early in the morning and open the BBC and be listening for any mention of their activities, and they will shout whenever there is a story about them that they carried out an attack or a bomb exploded in some place. They will be shouting and hailing. The victims said so when they came out of the Boko Haram camp. So there is no doubt that the publicity is a major oxygen. It is a major impetus. It gives serious encouragement to the terrorists. If that is the case, then as much as possible we should deny it. We should deny it, but of course, if a bomb explodes and people die, we have to report it. That's our responsibility in the media. Or as my colleague said, if there is serious kidnapping on the Abuja Zaria highway, the media should report it so that people should take measures and possibly not travel if they can avoid it. Yes, but that's different from crossing over and serving the propaganda purposes of the terrorists, like they are boasting and saying this is why they are doing it. We don't have to broadcast that.
Like it was pointed out earlier, Iroegbu, that a BBC, for example, or CNN or whatever international media would not go as far as speaking with terrorists while they're still in action, while they're active. I mean, we're not talking about terrorists who are repentant or repentant bandits, but these are people who are saying, look, as a matter of fact, yesterday I kidnapped somebody, and you're going to them to ask them questions. Is this a case of double standards by international media?
I don't think it's a case of double standard. I think the international media is also, I'm not speaking for them. They also have their own media interests according to how they're different from the local media. But it's a general challenge across this. What we're discussing now is also taking place across there was a time it was a topical issue in the US, also in the Western country. But if you also check, most time media bring this to bear if they feel that the government is not acting enough in the interest of the public. I remember the time of when the ISIS rose into prominence, and it seems that the Obama government was not really acting enough. What did the media do? They also show the ISIS when they behead, like Mick Foley, they beheaded British citizen, beheaded Western journalists.
Pearl in
yes, in Syria and Iraq. They aired it. CNN aired it, and it brought uproar among the public in the West that put pressure on the Western government and Obama administration to act, to relaunch the war against ISIS, which President Trump finished it off. So sometimes the media have to weigh if I expose this, what impact will it be for the public good? Will it engender, in that case of ISIS, where they show a number of people, their information, their videos now, but they don't show the actual killing. Right. But they show that where they are covered and eventually such were killed. Yeah. So it's not as if they don't show the terrorist act. Okay. But there is with motive that this will spur action by the government. Okay, so let's put on hold. We'll come back when we return from this short break. You're watching the Arise interview. Let's take a short break. The discussion continues with Arise analyst Mahmoud Jega and security analyst Senator Iroegbu. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I am Iroegbu. I still do have with me in the studio Arise analyst Mahmoud Jega and security analyst Senator Iroegbu. Thank you both gentlemen for your insights thus far. Mahmoud Jega, before we went on that break, you were going to add to what Iroegbu had to say. Yes. And you talk about the long-term perspective.
Yes, well, just to say that, you see, because the main issue we are talking about now is the divided line, whether it crossed the line to go into the bushes and find the terrorist leaders and interview them. And you see, even before ISIS and before Al-Qaeda and 9/11, there were many terrorist groups operating in the Western world. There was the Irish Provisional Republican Army in Britain. There was the Italian Red Brigades. There was the German Red Army faction. There was the Japanese Red Army. There was the Basque separatists in Spain. There was the Corsican separatists in France. There was even the French terrorist organization Action Directe. All these were prominent organizations in the 70s and 80s up to the early 90s. Then there were the Palestinian groups like Black September and Al-Qaeda. And honestly, in the last 40 years, I have never seen Time magazine or Newsweek or The Economist or any of the major Western newspapers that we used to see that time very well, unlike now, or even their television stations, you see, gives them such prominence and explain their, I mean, even the Colombian drug warlords. I didn't see any major interview with the leader of the Cali cartel or the Medellin cartel, Pablo Escobar. What is there for him to explain his reasons or his motives? This is an international criminal. What we should do is to get rid of him because he's destroying our youth. So certainly from what we can see of the attitude of the major Western media in the last 40 years that I was personally aware of, there was this restraint. They had a divided line with all this. Is not to justify what is happening in Nigeria now, the insecurity and the inaction, or even because people are asking questions.
So what has changed? Is it standards that have changed, you know, even as far as the Western world is concerned?
Well, certainly, as some people
why is it
pointed
acceptable
out,
in the case of Nigeria?
Exactly, because something that they will not do in their own countries. From 1972, when the IRA was shooting people and exploding bombs, until 1992, when they signed the Good Friday Peace Agreement, no interviews. BBC and the other British papers were not holding interviews with the underground leaders of the IRA. They were even blurring the voice and the images of Sinn Féin political leaders, because the political party Sinn Féin, led by Jerry Adams, was said to be the political wing of the IRA. Exactly. And whenever you see Jerry Adams speaking on television, they blow the voice. So they had these rules, but they broke it when they left their country and came here. Now that should not be acceptable. So
now when, let me ask, before I even go to whether, you know, when government says that BBC will be sanctioned, daily TV or Trust TV will be sanctioned, is government in order? But we'll come to that, because that's a very, very important point that I'd like you to address. But these documentaries and reports, essentially, do they really force the hands of government to act, like you were trying to point out earlier? How have they helped so far? I mean, you reeled out a number of similar, you know, reports that have happened in Nigeria. Have they made any difference to government's action?
Yeah, apart from threatening to shut the sanctioned the BBC.
Right.
I don't know if any of their action with regard to counter-insurgency or counter-terrorism activities in the northwest, especially in Zamfara State, have changed. But definitely, what it did now is to spark public debate and discussion around the issue. And some people who have not really understood the dynamics of the conflict, because for most Nigerians, they are really blind about the conflict itself is a sort of mystery. So the report has really been light to it to bring to bear to the members of the public some of the things, the real victims of it. Also, they are at least the documentary also expose, gave voices to also the victims.
But government says, you know, the warlords have been made to look like Nollywood stars.
The warlords were
Heroes.
not really exonerated in that, and it's also it's not as if I'm speaking for the BBC or whatever. I'm just looking at it as a Nigerian watching it. It's for government. It's not as if this is not the first time. This issue of the warlords have been written extensively. Some media houses have also written about them. They are known. And recently, one of them was Turban, and the state government know about it, and federal government will say they don't know about it. So these are issues. And of
course, we know that the governor of the state actually suspended.
He's suspended after public outcry. So what people are saying now is that people are beginning to ask government, look at this issue. You've heard the voices of the victims, you know. What is the next action? Because people are really dying. People are being displaced. The places are unsecure. And the action of the government is really enough. And from my own perspective, it's not enough to the extent that people are not safe. And these are Nigerians. These are human beings. They need to be protected. There need to be peace. So if we can spur government to maybe tinker with the way they are. If they say they don't know them, though the governor of Kaduna State have been saying that these people are known, they know their phone numbers, they know where they stay, then what people are asking, what is stopping government from taking action?
But you hear from the same Kaduna State Governor, Malam El-Rufai, that he was the one who informed the president that his own life too, if care is not taken, is on the line. So does it mean the president does not get the security briefing that he needs to get on a daily basis? How would that kind of information even fall through the cracks? Yes.
You know, you asked me if this has, what I'm telling from the body language of this present administration, it seems as if nothing moves them.
Malam Jega, does it, all those reports, documentaries, and what have you, have they in any way made any difference in the way government, reacts?
The government and the security agencies' reaction to the insecurity problem has been woefully inadequate from the point of view of citizens. You know, initially it looked like Boko Haram was degraded in the northeast. But it's so terrible to realize that what they did was to relocate to areas that were previously safe. The bandits were initially different from Boko Haram. They had no political agenda or anything. They were just criminal gangs. But it's like Boko Haram has now infiltrated the FCT and the Northwest Zone, and the two of them are working together, and ISWAP and Ansaru and all the others. So there has been a major failure on the part of government and the security agencies with respect to the most important responsibility of government, which is security. But we were discussing today the role of the media, whether in some cases we overdo our own responsibility. I thought that's what we are discussing. Because you see, the fact that the problem is very bad does not mean you should also do something as media or as citizen or anything to aggravate it.
Yeah, but doesn't the silence of the government, or seeming silence of the government, further, fuel the filling of those gaps, whether it's by the traditional media, the social media, and what have you?
Well, these ones we are talking about is because they are traditional media. It is because they are traditional media. They are guided by laws and ethics and professionalism and everything. However bad the situation is and however poorly the government and the security agencies mishandle the situation, that's not we should avoid. It does not justify our own avoiding our own professional lives. The social media is a different thing, because that one, for now, there is no control, so everything goes.
So let's stay on this. I mean, how complicated really would you say the role of the media is in troubling times like this? What really should the media be doing on all fronts? Malam Jega.
Well, what the media should be doing is to live up to its professional responsibility, hold public officers to account, beginning from the president to the security chiefs and everyone else, hold them to account, all public officers to discharge their responsibilities. If it is a matter of poor funding of the security agencies, if it is a matter of corruption in the security agencies and in the military, or inefficiency or poor training, or if the government is not procuring enough weapons for them, all this is within the professional responsibility of the media to bring to light, as well as what people are saying and feeling, and also the plight of the victims, all those that have been killed and wounded and raped and kidnapped. It is all within that, but still it is now giving this media oxygen to the terrorists now that we are talking about. You know, even the man who says he is the mediator between government and the trained kidnapped victims, quite often he goes over the age. If, for example, the terrorists say that if in the next 2 days government does not release our captured leaders, we are going to start slaughtering the victim. If you have that information, for goodness sake, make it available to the security agencies
and not put it out there.
Exactly, because if you put it, imagine the anxiety and the tension that you create in all of us when we are not in a position to do anything. That day I couldn't sleep, honestly, when I had that. And I didn't think that was information that should have gone to the public.
And staying with that mediator that you talk about, I forgot his name now. He actually raised his hands in the air and said, look, I'm done with this. I'm no longer going to be mediating between government and the terrorists. As a matter of fact, government is not cooperating. That was what he was saying. You almost want to ask the question, exactly on whose side is he? Whether it's this mediator or any other. At one point,
he sounded like he was serving the propaganda purposes of the terrorists. That was the problem. I am not saying all the time. It's good to always have a mediator throughout the world. When you are in a tight situation like this, there are some organizations, you know, if it is in the Western world and many parts of the world, usually it is the Red Cross that serves these purposes. They are regarded as neutral by all sides. Here, I don't know why we don't have maybe Red Cross or its equivalent.
We don't even hear much of them in all of this, or whether it's a Médecins Sans Frontières and, you know, what have you. I wonder what's going on that front. But multiple information from government, or no information at all, continues to fill, you know, all of this. You don't hear from security agencies. How do you get information?
Yes, even
when they're not cooperating?
The security agencies, I feel they're also in a very difficult situation. And remember that they are also under authority, and they can't just come out and start issuing statements without approval, or goes contrary to the political authorities.
Right.
So they have to be very tactical and measured in the way they also issue such statement. So, but we have civil authorities who can also be informing the members of the public. And one of the issues, the challenges we're also having is in the Northwest, is really defining the scope of operation or engagement of these security agencies. What are really their rule of engagement? What is really their scope of operation, you know, regarding this area? If you check the operation in the Northeast versus against Northwest, you can see that the Northeast operation is well defined. There's a well-defined counter-insurgency, counter-terrorism operation going in the Northeast. You know, but Operation Lafia Dole with structures in place. But Northwest is fluid. We don't actually know, and this creates a sense of confusion in the minds of the security agents. So they don't want to go overboard or issue statements that are, and the gaps you keep on talking about is this gap that also fueling all this alternative news that you are seeing. So that's the issue.
Madam Garba, Mahmoud, I wanted to say, Garba Shehu, Femi Adesina, government spokespersons, are they helping matters? Honestly. At times like this?
Honestly, I think...
Especially considering that they are media persons. Personalities.
They are media persons, big ones, but once they became spokesmen of government, it is a whole different dynamic. And the general feeling, honestly, in many cases, is that they do not help the situation. Well, you see, it's a very old problem. If you begin from the training, let's say, of the police, there was a time I was invited to a seminar at the War College, and there were many policemen there, and I did say this, that police, why are you always deliberately understating figures? Right. Even a common motor accident, the police will say 2 people died, and the people who were there will say no, there were 10 or 15. Not to talk of a situation where there was shooting or some major engagement. The police will underrate. And they told me that it is part of their training not to cause anxiety in the public. But
so when we go out there as media and say 40 people died, unfortunately, in the accident, are we helping in any way? Not even talking about an accident, in a terrorist attack.
I think for media, there are some certain information that you shouldn't report, especially, for example, if it's an intelligence information that we, jeopardize operation, put the life of the security agents in danger. For example, you have a clue of an operation that will take place and you just go and report it. That is foolhardy. Or, for example, you hear about the officers or personnel of who are killed. Instead of, because first and foremost, those officers or they have family. You can report that so officer, but don't put their name, even if you have such information. Because until their family members are informed, so that they can hear it and digest, so that they will not just start hearing the name in the newspapers. So that's where you filter, that's where the gatekeeping comes in. Right. So that's where now the issue of the figures.
Right.
That's also where, because sometimes not only the police, it happens among the military. Sometimes their perception is that they don't want to give a sense of, create a sense of panic or give away that they are losing so much personnel. But if you, over time, you find out that, okay, there's also a blowback to it. These people that are killed, they are not just figures. They are not stones.
They're not just
these
numbers.
These are officers. These are human beings, not special ones that should be honored. That you can't just bury them like that without an honor. So that's why I'm saying our job as the job of media is quite dynamic. You have to weigh so many options inside your head as you are putting down this story. Which way do I go? Do I, if I put these figures, will it create panic? And for how long will I continue if this trend continues? And am I doing service to the dead, to the fallen heroes, if I continue to downplay their role and bury their contribution and the information about them? Absolutely. So these are some of the options. You have to weigh it. Each time may present a different situation. There may be a situation you may be able to, you may think, okay, this outweighs this. You take it next time, the same situation, but different thought process depending on the time.
And the discretion.
And the discretion. So these are things that informs
Madam Jega, yes.
No, well, I was just thinking, the relationship between media and political leaders all over the world is a tricky one.
For example,
mutual distrust.
And also even defining what serves the national security interest. Like there was this story that in 1961, when the U.S. government and the CIA was plotting to invade Cuba, 48 hours before the operation started, the New York Times learned of it. And the managing editor of the New York Times called the President John F. Kennedy and said, look, we have heard that this is what you are about to do. And he said, yes, the operation has been approved. It has already started. If you report it, our soldiers will die and their blood will be on your hands. So there was an emergency meeting of the daily of the New York Times management and the proprietor, and they decided not to publish. And the operation went on and it failed. So a few days later, the publisher, Sulzberger, ran into the president at some party. And the president said, you are a foolish man. Why didn't you report that story? If you had reported it, I would have cancelled the operation and we would have all been spared this embarrassment. So that's why I said dealing with political leaders is very tricky. He was the one who said don't publish it in national security interest. And when it failed, he said, yeah, when it failed, he said it's your fault. If you had reported it, we would have cancelled it.
Madam Jega, let me stay with you. In recent times, the issue of religion and ethnicity being, you know, a factor or factors in our political, you know, narrative and our democratic ethos is taking a very, very serious, and the media has been awash, you know, discussing it, talking about it. What kind of approach really should the media, you know, bring to bear?
The media
on
has
that
to
discourse?
be very careful. You know, the best example in Africa was Rwanda. It was the media reporting and the irresponsible statements of some actors and political leaders that set the stage for the genocide. Genocides do not happen overnight. You know, usually the stage must have been set for them. And when we were talking about, you know, the self-censorship, you know, like it's different when, let's say, criminals attack a police station or some post and kill some people. The one that we have to be very careful about is like when we have intercommunal violence. When we have intercommunal clash. You know, as a media house, even if you establish that 40 people died, you must judge that if we report that 40 people were killed in this village, it's like we are encouraging them to also mount a reprisal attack. So you look at situations like that. It's not the same thing as saying, you know, bandits killed people on the road. Okay, that one you have the entire population behind you. Everybody is angry that bandits did this. But if it is between religious or tribal or ethnic communities, then you call for, and certainly it doesn't call for releasing the pictures and showing gory pictures of dead bodies. You know, even if it is of accident victims, we are usually careful about that in the mainstream print media, not like in the social media where you see an accident, you quickly do a video before the families even heard it is all over Facebook or WhatsApp or somewhere. There has to be sanity in media practice.
Whether we're talking about Muslim ticket, Christian ticket, Hausa, Fulani herdsmen, Igbo, whatever.
Everything we can overdo it, and we have to refrain from overdoing. We didn't say don't report or don't discuss, but don't overdo in a situation where matters will get out of hand. All of us will be running.
Right.
You know, newspaper.
Very quickly, the federal government has said the 2 media organizations will be sanctioned. What do you make of that? Is it justified?
I've always been. I'm not saying that media is above mistakes. They're above mistake, or they don't go overboard sometimes. But I've always kicked against media censorship or trying to gag or intimidate the media. I try to speak against it, and I know that in-house we can always find a way to manage it. But over time, I've seen that government has been sanctioning a lot of media, and I've been in a couple of radio stations to speak. I see how terrified they are because of these issues. Yeah. Yes, it's true that also government has to, so that things doesn't escalate. But to give you an answer to it, I don't support it.
Right. Yes. Malam Jega, you have the last word.
Well, I also think the government should tread carefully. It is true there is a broadcasting code, and any television or radio stations that obtain their license have already signed to the ethics and the laws and regulations embedded in the broadcasting code. So don't violate it. But on the other hand, government should look at the overall situation of disenchantment with the insecurity situation and let people not get the impression that you are trying to cover up your failures by gagging up the press. You know, the NBC can have another session with all the broadcast owners and re-educate them about the limits imposed by the broadcast code. I think that will do for now.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Mahmoud Jega, Rise News analyst, thank you so much for joining us. Senator Iroegbu, thank you for your insights, both of you. Well, that's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Do join us again. From me, Ngozi Alebu, and the entire team here in Abuja. Goodbye, and thanks for watching.